As we continue the book of Genesis, I'm sure for some of you, you found it kind of challenging to take the position. But the thing here is, I really encourage you to really study it. To really validate if what I'm saying here is valid or not. Look at commentaries, look at good commentaries, and study it. I took some time to lay my premise last week so that everybody's in context on how I will proceed. And we said that the book of Genesis is not written to us. It's not written to us. It was written to a group of people 5,000 years ago in the wilderness by Moses. And at that time, so it was not written to us, but it is for us. The truth that we gather there can be applied to us right now. But the first thing that we have to do is to know the truth. For us to do that, we have to say that the book of Genesis is not about modern cosmology. It is not a modern understanding of the creation of things based on our understanding of science. One of the biggest problems that we have, one of the biggest challenges that we have is how to take out our biases. We all have bias. Our bias is brought about by our culture we live in and the things we learn about certain things, including this passage. And what we want to do is to take out our biases and try to understand the passage based on how the original recipient would understand it. There is a principle in hermeneutics which states that a passage cannot mean something apart from what the original recipient would understand it. That's what you call understanding based on its cultural context. So we say that cosmology in Genesis is not modern. It's ancient. They believe a lot of things. They believe that the skies are solid. That the water, there was literally a gate that holds all the water above. That's their belief. And they believe that the mountains holds those solid mass. That's their belief. We cannot impose on them our belief right now that no, that's vapor. We have to understand it based on their understanding of things. They believe that the earth was flat. And that when the sun sets at that time, there is a gate that keeps the sun. And it would rise. Because they have no knowledge that it's circle. And when Moses was speaking to them, he was speaking to them in their context of things. As I mentioned, during the time, they believed thinking was based on the intestine. We think not through our mind, we think through our tummy. And that was how it is written in the Bible. In fact, the word mind there in the Bible, if you look at it, comes from the word intestines. Internal organs. And that is their belief. That's why when they mummify, they keep this one, but they take out the brain during that time. And we say that God did not update their science. God never said, Bob, it's not through your intestine that you think, it's through your brain. God was speaking to them through what? Through their understanding. Through their comprehension. God never said that the earth is not flat, that it's circle. He did not correct that. He was speaking to them in their terms. Another assumption we said is that ancient cosmology is more interested in ontology. But the ontology, the beginning of things, is based on the creation of things is the creation of functions, not material. During that time, if something is not functioning, it does not exist. Wala siyang silbi. And people, for something to have meaning in their time, it has to function properly. So, when we are looking here in the book of Genesis, and we had a lot of points that we made last week, and I told my wife I would post this in YouTube so that you can go through it and really scrutinize all that I'm saying and validate if it's right and research on that. So when Moses was speaking, he had to speak to them in the same wavelength. If they don't speak in the wavelength, then all of a sudden that would sound Greek. Right? It's like, it's so funny, Bambino is going through CMA. And it's so funny when you tell him 7 plus 9, what's 7 plus 9? 16, right? What's for Bambino? Wait. He's being taught to think differently. My point is, if we are to speak to a kid, we have to use the language of a kid. Lest we will not connect. We have to connect with our audience. So therefore, the author was concerned on what words he will choose, how to communicate effectively. Obviously, Moses was with them. He knows the culture. He knows what's going on. And what's important, therefore, as we look into these passages, is we have to know the cultural context. Even, kasi sometimes you go to a lexical study, a word study. You see a word, but a word can mean many things. You might translate, I love my wife is different from I love art. I love playing basketball. Those are different concepts of love. So when you look at a lexical study, when you look at the word, finding in lexical study na importante. How was that word used? And you would make an analysis on that. So even if you make a right word translation, it can still be miscommunicated if there is a wrong cultural understanding. My case in point last week was marriage. When we talk about marriage, now we talk about people falling in love. But during ancient times, when you talk about marriage, it has nothing to do with love. It has a lot to do with arranged marriages. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, all of them arranged marriage. It is, even up to now, di ba? Uso pa rin yun sa mga Muslims, Catholic, arranged marriages. That is their culture. What is the benefit of our alliance? Of our kids marrying each other? Nowadays, if you translate the word daylight saving time, do you know what daylight saving time is? No? Babi, you know what daylight? Cheska, you know what daylight is? No. Oh, kami naabutan pa namin yun eh. Daylight saving time. So, even if we translate daylight saving time, and you translated word per word, you would get the word, but you would not understand what it means. Right? So meaning, you have to understand the culture wherein these things are being said. Iron curtain. Right? You can translate iron curtain. O alam mo, matigas na curtain. You can translate it. You can translate it right, but if you have the culture wrong, you miss. And that's a danger when we look at Genesis. We have our preconceived ideas how everything means what it says. Case in point, if there is if you have 100 sheep, and you slept, you woke up, all of them are dead. What would you conclude? A, you would conclude that, que sera, sera, I can do nothing, we live with both the good and the bad. B, would you conclude that, well, the sheep of the man all died because that man is a sinful man? Or C, would you conclude that the sheep died because that man was negligent? He did not take care of his sheep that night and left the doors open. We would say letter C, modern thinking. Ancient thinking, no. They would say, remember in the New Testament, that man is blind. Why? Because he's sinful. Their thinking is different. So if that happened in near ancient time, they would conclude that, que sera, sera, fatalism. Either they say fatalism, or they say, you've been sinful, that's why God punished you and killed all your sheep. So we might get the story right, but if we don't understand the culture wherein that story was told, we will not get the right meaning. Nowadays, if you talk to a Japanese, right, discussing a deal, panayesin. Yeah? If you don't know the culture, he said, he's agreeing with all what I'm saying. So, Mr. blah, 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 we want to propose. Nah. In your mind, if you don't know the culture, it doesn't mean they're agreeing. It only means, I understand. I understand. And you get an email next day and said, we don't accept your offer. And you're shocked. Because you don't understand their culture. In Filipino context, when you translate the word, kain na, come, let's eat. For Filipino, we're not inviting you to eat. I remember I had an employee. When I say, kain ko ha, talagang kumukuha. What? I said, ano ba yan? Siyempre nahiya na. Sige, kuha. Then in fact, umabot sa point is, I'll not ask you kasi umuoo ka. But you might translate it right, but honestly, for us Filipinos, we're just being polite. We're not really inviting them to eat and dine with us. We're just being polite of offering. So again, you can translate the words correctly, but if you don't understand the culture wherein it is written, we misinterpret the meaning of the passage. We have to realize, and again, I was telling my wife, shall I just preach the passage? And based on my initial comment is, no, Bobby, still lay the foundation of the interpretation. But eventually, we will just be preaching and preaching once we get used to this thought that we are not dealing with modern literature, but ancient literature. One of the things, when we talk of mythology, Greek gods, Roman gods, who likes reading? That's in college, I think you read that, right? You read that, right? The mga gods of the blah, 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 blah. And some of them may temper. Some of them are frivolous. Some of them are kind of nagtatantrum and all that. They're selfish. They're worldly. They think about, they're undignified. And we say that's nothing. That's mythology. But, for ancient people, that's not mythology. That's science. It is their way of trying to explain things. When something happens in the world around, they try to put meanings. And all of these things, they think they're gods. It's a way of them explaining what is happening around them. But for us, we say, no, it's not. It's a myth. Mythology lang yan. But for them, it's how things function. That's why as we look into this, it gives us a glimpse of what the culture